everyone's given up. There's no endurance anymore. If we would have given up, where would we
They
be?
don't teach you how to be married. They don't tell you the truth. They don't tell you the highs and lows. They don't tell you that you need to know how to resolve.
Just discovering life outside of church. It's like I knew how to be Superman, but I didn't know how to be Clark Kent.
For just being a gracious woman, for being a great wife, a great mother, a great friend.
And make a long story short, we got together and we began to communicate. She felt like I wasn't concerned.
Endurance. I encourage anyone that's in a marriage, embrace endurance. And also,
To say, he said,
the
marriage
process.
is the closest thing to heaven you'll ever experience. It also be the closest thing to hell you experience. And that just has always stayed in me through the years. So that's why I always.
Things people get married and they lose themselves. They're no longer them. They, the two is supposed to become one flesh, but it didn't say you supposed to.
This is really great because of what we're doing.
Amen. Amen.
That will make an impact on someone's marriage.
Wow, it's been 17 years.
Next month, 17 years.
And I think what spits out to me is a lot of people look at it, especially look at us now, and like, man, Kevin and Lynn, they got it all together, and they don't understand the stuff that we've been through as a married couple. I tell everybody all the time, we counsel people, it's not peaches and creams all the time. You're gonna have the peaks and you're gonna have the valleys. Stuff happens.
Right.
Stuff happens. I remember when we first got married. Probably our first maybe 5 years, 6 years. We went through one of those peaks and valleys.
More like valleys.
You're right. Because, especially financial.
Yes.
I tell people, a lot of times finance can really hurt marriage. But, we thank God that we still made it here. And just to share a little bit of our story, 5 years into the marriage, we pretty much lost everything. I'm from Kentucky, you from Texas. I came down and worked for NASA.
Right.
Got laid off. And we went through a rough period where
We did.
we lost a lot. We lost houses, cars, repossessions.
Right.
And people look at it now like, when you share those stories, they don't believe it.
Right. I remember when we first got married, for a very long time, I was single parent, because we're a blended family. And so I was a single parent for many years, and I was used to doing things on my own. I was a substitute teacher for HISD, raising boys. I had my own, wasn't renting, owned my own townhome, all of that. And so I was used to doing everything on my own.
Right.
But I remember one day we was going through a rough patch, and I never forget, you made me really angry. And so you told me, you said, you know what? You looked at me and you said, you know what, Lynn, it's no longer me, myself, and I. It's supposed to be, since we're married, it's supposed to be we, us together.
Yeah.
And I remember at that moment, I got angry with you, turned around, about face, and walked out of the room. And I was just furious. But you know what? After a while, I realized you was right. And I believe that had a lot to do with where we are today.
Yes.
In other words, what I'm saying is, we have to grow. We have to grow up.
We did.
Oh, God.
Married. Almost 18 years later.
Well, my memory is a little bit different than that, but that is the gist of it. Right at about 30 years ago, in the same high school, and definitely in different circles at that point. And but God knew what He was doing. And one of the distinct things that I remember that we've been through, talking about just being a covenant or kingdom covenant relationship is in our own marriage, just going from literally being homeless to where God restored and then brought us to the place where we are now. And I know for me, it was me really just growing up. It was me, it was God taking me from where I was and literally after we were married, just walking me through a growth process that allowed me to go from being selfish, understanding that it was more about what He wanted and the purposes that He had for our marriage versus what I wanted.
But it's more like people don't understand when you get married, it's two worlds literally merging together. So you take me, I came from a single parent home, of course, where I saw strong women, holding it down, keeping it together. They made it for themselves. They didn't have men in and out the house, and they taught us how to be strong women. And so I came in, of course, we came in, we had our kids, 2 of our kids before marriage, then we had a 3rd child, and in between that had other relationships. So then we had a 4th child, so by the time we got married, we had our 4 kids, to add, 3 more to it with our 7 now. So when we think about the two worlds coming together, you saw your dad work. So I said, well, God, I got a man that work. Woo, Jesus. And so, but we still found ourselves 7 times with 7 kids homeless, sleeping on people's floors, 6 people piled in an extended stay that was meant for 3. And it's like, okay, well, how do you go from that to now being sustained? And it was a process of merging 2 worlds and both of us growing up, as individuals, but yet collectively.
I think the biggest thing was not only going through physically what we were going through, but God really revealing to each one of us together who we really were. Understanding that it was, that we had to grow from a spiritual standpoint as well as a natural standpoint. And I think that was the biggest piece to the chasm that brought everything together, was understanding who I really was, that I wasn't just who I had been named. I was who He had called me to be. And once that came to play, once that began to change in my thought process, it made everything a lot easier. Now, of course, nothing, it wasn't perfect. It wasn't a pretty sight. But I just thank God for what He did. Again, I can distinctly remember.
So we've been married 22 years.
This May we'll be married 22 years.
22 years, and then, man, we dated like 2 years.
Yes. We waited 2 years.
We waited, yes, 2 years.
You waited. I would have married you sooner.
I know. We joke about that. We talk about that, how we met, and day one we probably should have gotten married.
Yes, we met. First time we met, it was in a church service, and you were preaching, and I think that was the thing that I didn't even know you, but that was the thing I fell in love with. So to me, that was the man that I married. I married that man that was loving God, serving God on stage, but I think as when we got married and as we began our marriage, being kind of young and knowing you had that passion for God, and I had a passion for God, and I just think we had to learn how to work together, because you love God and you were going for God, and that's what I loved about you.
I know the one thing that we had to work out was just me learning to eat wings.
Yes.
And
I like wings.
that was our first date, I believe,
our first
right?
date, we went to Wings of the Morning. It was your birthday.
I know. And I tell you, the thing I remember the most was just there was no easy way to eat them. I was just going to make a big mess. You saw me make a mess, you saw me smack my mouth and eat like a giant.
And I still love you.
I know you did. That's interesting, but time just kind of flew on us. It's just amazing during those years of just trying to get things in order for us to get married. in my mind, that was the most important thing, was just that we would have the place to live. Neither one of us really owned a car, so we had to buy our first car. So, you know, I worked for the church, you worked for Baylor College of Medicine, and so there was a lot of things, there was a lot of new things happening. And so I still remember those days like they were yesterday.
Me too.
Yeah, that's unique. But you know, I think one of the greatest shifts as we did get married after 2 years was, like you said, my fast-paced lifestyle, just preaching and traveling and going around the world, literally. And now married and connected with you, I think the greatest thing I learned from our marriage was just going from the me syndrome to the we.
Wow. Can you believe it's been almost 25 years?
June 19th would be 25 years.
25 years, man. Where have time gone? Man, we have been through a lot of ups, a lot of downs, some valley moments, some mountain moments, but we're still here.
Yeah.
We're
By the
still
grace of God.
We're still here. I'm grateful. I'm grateful that you are in my life. Grateful that for all the things that you have done. But I'm also grateful for those bad times. You know, remember, well, before we can get to that, do you remember like how we really met?
Yes, we met in elementary.
In elementary, now a girl in 5th grade. In 5th grade. Back on the back end of Drew Intermediate School, while you were getting ready to go home. Met you, and then fell in love with you from that time forward. And then all the way through high school, just getting the opportunity of meeting your dad, meeting your mom, and all of those things. And then I think it was around about 18, 19 years old when we started dating. I think it's because you saw me with somebody else.
Oh, that's what you say.
I think it's because you saw me with some other girl, but yet during all of that time, all of a sudden, you know, give me a call, and now here we are, almost 25 years later. 25 years later, man, it's been a journey. But in that, do you remember some of the rough times of our marriage?
Yes, I remember all of them.
You remember? Yeah, I hadn't always been kind towards you. And I remember distinctly one day you told me, you say, somebody who said that they love me so much, how they can treat me so bad. And those moments always reflect in my heart so that I can become a better man. But I can recall days distinctly where there were verbal abuse, even physical abuse. Those times where I needed to grow as a man. Not to say that I didn't have the example from my father or even have other men to look at, but it was times where I felt like I needed to grow. And I thought as growing that it was a process of trying to bring you along with me because of the other issues I had in life. And I couldn't control what I was going through, so I thought I would be able to control you in a way. Yeah. And in those issues and those problems caused me to react in a negative way.
Yeah.
How did all of that make you feel?
It made me feel like less than a woman, or made me feel like it was something that I had done or didn't do or wasn't doing enough, or it didn't make me feel good at all.
It's been 34 years.
Yeah, almost 35.
35. What's the date? Give me the date.
November 3rd.
Got it this time.
November 3rd, 1983.
34 years.
Almost 35 years, yeah.
When I think about the good days.
Yes.
And the
bad days.
And you know something, we were talking, and I can ask you about the bad days, and we were thinking the same thing.
The exact same thing. The worst thing, I think.
Times.
The worst of times, yeah.
The best of times.
And the best of times. And so, most often, I believe that people think because they are busy doing the work of the Lord and doing the things of God that they're exempt from issues and problems, and that's not so. And so in that year, more like, yeah, my daughter was in high school, just finishing high school, 18 as a matter of fact, and she got pregnant. And that was a devastating time, being in ministry, working in the kingdom and doing all these different things. It just kind of came at a time where everything just kind of shut down. And that was a very, 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 very complicated time, I think, for us. And that was the, I think, most trying time. I remember just being fragmented mentally. And I think that was both of us. And we had been so close, doing so much together, that when both people become broken, it's just hard to get a fix. You know, hard to get that place to be fixed. And I remember standing in the kitchen one day and saying, Lord, my mind feels like it's in a puzzle, a particular puzzle. And I can recall literally, physically doing this, just trying to do this and put the pieces of my mind back together. And that was a hard time, a really hard time.
I said Nikki was dealing with the embarrassment of the
situation. Of course, my daughter was dealing with lives and embarrassment.
And I wasn't myself.
You wasn't yourself. No. You were angry, very angry.
And I remember, but life still goes on.
What season we were in our marriage, and that's one thing that we always talk about is peaks and valleys. And so now we joke about it, like when we're in a valley season is when you like get on my nerves and I get on your nerves. So we're like, okay, this too shall pass, this valley season, and we laugh about it, but we be honest, and it passed. And so we go back to the peak season where I like you.
And I love you. Again, it was all learning, not just hard. I tell people all the time. The auspicious man, the Bible says he who finds a wife.
You like touching me, don't you?
He who finds a wife. So I thank God that you're my favorite, And I kept, people always say, so how did you make it through? And I just knew he had a plan for us. Because when you go through stuff like that, through a marriage, and you start to, it would be real, you start to say, did I marry the wrong person?
Really, you did?
You said that.
Yes, I did sometimes.
You start to say
yeah.
Yeah. But then you realize that there's a purpose, there's a plan behind it. Yeah. And that's what I see now, through everything that we've been through. The good times, the bad times. There was a purpose behind it.
I believe that too, because we're stronger now.
That's good.
Back then, because we were in it, we'd understand, why. And a lot of times we don't understand why your actions begin to manifest and they're not nice. Sometimes I would just shut down because I didn't understand what was going on, why we going through this, why we have to lose a vehicle. Why do we have to get evicted? Yeah, why do we have to get evicted? We're trying, what's going on? But again, like you said, it was a part of our learning process. And that's one thing that I've learned over the years is to embrace the process with God's grace.
And how can you effectively minister to somebody who's been through different marriages, problems, even you went to school for counseling, just the proper steps where to go through. So that was all learning curves for us. But we made it. He had a plan for us. He had a plan.
In making it.
And still making it.
With God's help, do we always be in that peak valley, that peak season? No. Sometimes we do still have valleys, but we're mature now. We have grown now to recognize and say, okay, all right, okay, we're in the valley. Sometimes I might not understand why you do things the way you do it, or you might not. Exactly, you might not understand the reason why I do things the way I do it. But at the same time, I am mature enough now. I wasn't then, but I have grown down to where I just say, you know what, God, you handle this. You know, you handle this, because you have to get to a point in your marriage where, although you have peaks and valleys, you have to understand, don't go nowhere. Don't go anywhere. It's teamwork.
So what would you tell somebody who is experiencing what we're experiencing? What would be your major outcome? What would be your major bullet point?
Well, I would encourage anyone to, first of all, embrace endurance.
Yes.
I find in counseling and speaking, even when we do it at church, everyone's given up. There's no endurance anymore. And sometimes I think if we would have given up, where would we be? Where would we be right now? No Powerful Living, no Tyler and Taylor. We didn't have them right away. Where would they be? Endurance. I encourage anyone that's in a marriage, embrace endurance, and also the process, the power of wait. Wait for God to move. Give him an opportunity to move in your marriage. And that's what we did. Sitting in those closets, crying, me on depressed and not knowing what to do. It was building me, my inner man. It was strengthening me. And so that way we had to learn through it all. Purpose was greater than what we was going through.
But I just thank God for what he did. Again, I can distinctly remember, and our kids even laugh about this now, which surprises me, but there was a time where we just didn't have any money. And we didn't have enough money to even buy diapers for our child. And we had to put a grocery sack on the baby until we could get diapers.
2 bags together would take, to be specific.
So to where God took us from that place to making, allowing us to bring in well over 6 figures. And I think really the biggest piece to that was, again, just him revealing our identity, but also reassuring or revealing to us the purpose. And I think that really was the clue to it all. During all of that, I knew that there was a purpose for us being married. We didn't see it then. We didn't often talk about it then. But now, reflecting back, I can see God was piecing and placing things together. And there was a purpose behind everything that he did. Everything that we went through at that time was purposed for times like this.
But you know what? When I stop and think about some of the things that we encountered, I mean, let's be real. Both of us are raised in church, okay? And so you see people, but they are fake and they put on this false thing. And so they teach you how to be spiritual, but they don't teach you how to be married.
Wow.
They don't tell you the truth. They don't tell you the highs and lows. They don't tell you that you need to know how to resolve conflict. They don't need to tell you that you need to know how to communicate. And that has been one of our biggest issues that we've had to work on, and still, WIP, work in progress. We're still every day, because of course anything that is not growing is dead. So we're still growing and developing in that area, learning how to communicate. Because if you can't communicate with someone, then how do you get them to understand you, and how do you even understand who you are with that person? And so it has definitely been a process. I mean, going from knowing how to not, start yelling just because you don't understand what's being said, to stopping and actually trying to listen and understand who, me understanding who you are, and oh, that's just him. That he doesn't mean anything by it. Every couple has their own way of dealing with each other, healthy, but their own way of dealing with each other. And sometimes when outside people don't understand, they may assume something based on how they were, how their minds are, or how their thinking is. And so we had to overcome a lot of, and telling, people, okay, we our names are on the marriage certificate, not mama, daddy, aunt Sue, cousin, brother, you know, don't mess with my baby kind of thing. And so, you know, really understanding and growing, you know, as individuals, you know, and that's one of the biggest things. People get married and they lose themselves. They're no longer them. They, you know, the two is supposed to become one flesh, but it didn't say you're supposed to lose your identity. You're not supposed to lose, you know, if I like pizza, I like pizza. You don't have to eat it because you like tamales or vice versa, you know. But we should be one, as in the sense of we are bringing together those two pieces to go out and fulfill the destiny and call that God has for us. And so I think that's some of the way that we are continuing to grow even in this point in our lives.
And I think the biggest thing that we can tell anybody is there's no perfect marriage.
Not at all.
No perfect marriage. And if you find one, please let me know.
Yes, let me know.
I hadn't come across one yet, and you know, we pastors, we lead people and all these different things, but that doesn't change the fact that we've still got to work at what God has given us. We have to not only value it, but we have to work and let God continue to shape and mold and reveal to us in the situation. I think that's the best advice that I can give, is that you have to understand that it's always going to be a work in progress. Just like you said, if it's not growing, then it's dead. So, you know, that being the case, you know, we were talking about, or I mentioned that we were in that hotel, in that extended stay for as long as we were. And I remember when we moved into the 5-bedroom house that God gave us. And that was like a trigger for me that, you know what, everything that we just went through over the however many years it was not only worth it, like I said, it was purposed. And you know, it's things like that or pieces like that where God just literally almost stops time and lets you see that, you know, no matter what you're seeing, what you're going through, what's going on, my hand is still at work. And that was the biggest thing.
And you can make it, because He makes all things beautiful in His time.
I think the greatest thing I learned from our marriage was just going from the me syndrome to the we, us.
Yeah.
And that was a big thing.
I think for me that was a difficult part in our marriage, because I loved you and we loved each other and we both loved God, but I think we were trying to figure out how it came together. That it wasn't me loving God, you loving God, but how together we could work together in ministry. Because I had just gotten saved, I had just met you. I came out in a Baptist church to this spirit-filled,
Holy Ghost fire.
yeah, so that was all new to me, and
Yes.
we got married, I got, thrown, we were in ministry, and it was all new to me, so I was trying to figure everything out, and you just going for God. I think we had to figure out, how do we fit each other, how do we work together to do ministry, because in the beginning of our marriage, it was His ministry, whatever He was doing for God, it was Him. I didn't feel like I was a part of it, because He was just going. And I think the years we had to learn to work together. We had to learn to take each other, what our feelings into consideration, to do the work of God together. That it wasn't,
Right.
that I wasn't going around saying that's your ministry.
Right.
But I was, feeling like we're doing ministry together.
Absolutely. I think for me that we had many promises from God, and we still do, but we know that there's a process now to seeing those promises come to pass. And I think the two greatest things that I learned that I think you and I have discussed many times, there was, back in those days, there were not very many marriage ministries, or there were not many marriage books like there are today. There weren't churches even doing couple retreats or nothing, zero. And we were part of a mainline large denominational movement, and none of that was happening. And so the unique thing that I feel like I had to learn the hard way, how to humble myself. I had to learn how to honor you, to realize we're a team. And if things aren't going right in my home, how can they go right where we're doing ministry at? So that was a huge thing. That I wish we had some mentors in marriage, not in ministry, but in marriage. It's funny, I was thinking about the other day when my mom said, our church was full, altars were full, people were being saved, and God was touching people. And how my mom shared this story. You know this. My mom and dad have been married 50 years this coming year, and the greatest thing she told me, I still remember. She goes, after that day, she said, "Hey, it's a powerful service." I said, "Yeah, Mom, it really was." She goes, "But don't forget." She pointed at you across the sanctuary. She's like, "That's your first ministry." And I said, "Absolutely, Mom." And it's funny just having those reminders. It just kind of brought back the memories of the stones back in the Red Sea. Like, don't forget. Remember that. Always remember that. So.
And that took time, for us. I think that was, when I think about our marriage, that was one of our biggest struggles, is that there weren't, I didn't go to church and they weren't talking about marriages. Nobody was teaching on marriage, how to have a healthy marriage. There wasn't a lot of that around, and being married, when we got married, I felt like if I didn't feel like I was a part of what you were doing, then I was like against God somehow. Like if I had a problem with you just going for God and doing ministry, and even though I felt like left out, or if I felt like, God, why am I here? Why did we get married? If He doesn't need me, He can go and just work for you, do ministry and just give His all to you. And that was my struggle. And God, when we learned let's work together. Let's do this. It's a team ministry. We're going to serve God together, and it's not just one of us. And I remember even when we started pastoring, where I couldn't go into it saying this was your church. It had to be us working together. So I thank God now we see marriage conferences, and there's more people talking about marriages and put in marriage. Right. Yes, put in your marriage. Your marriage is first, and I think we've learned that. But like you said, there was no one there to help us. There was no one there to kind of guide us on that road, and we learned things the hard way. There was plenty of tears, plenty of times where I felt like, God, why? I knew in my heart you were the man He called me to marry, but there were times where you're like, God, was it really, the enemy will come in, like he came in with Eve, did the Lord really say, and I was like, did you really say He was the one?
Yes.
But through all that, through all the growing, not giving up, persevering, and, I felt like, I saw iron sharpens iron, and I was like, God, we've been sharpened. Mm-hmm. We've sharpened each other. And I think I can say the greatest thing, my struggle has also been your strength, because I just want to walk in the room and I want to hide, be a part of the wall, and you come in and you come in with your confidence and you're ready to just, go. But that was something a strength that I learned, that you helped me to grow in.
Right.
So in that, even though you pushed me to do things, and it was like, my spirit was, yes, let's do this, and my flesh was like, I don't want to do this, don't make me do this. But over time, it was like, we can talk about how we struggled, but I can say, God, also how you've encouraged me, you've strengthened me. And, I thank God for that in our marriage, that when we learned to work together, you were encouraging, you were pushing me to be who God called me to be. That I wasn't just in the back end, you go do your thing, but you were nudging on me to go.
That's right. I think just what you said just brought a lot of just memories to me about just discovering life outside of church. It's like I knew how to be Superman, but I didn't know how to be Clark Kent. So that was the funny thing. It's like I knew how to do the superhero stuff.
Ministry, but when you come home,
marriage was definitely a challenge, and but through much tribulation, through much prayer, and the great thing I think just within me was. I think you and I both discovered how people just give up so easy in their marriage and their covenant with God. But that's the one thing I always respected about us, is that we were all in, and we were never going to quit. I felt like where people would throw the towel in the ring, we would take the towel and wipe the sweat off our face and just keep pushing. We're like, we're going to work through this, work through it. And that's the one thing I really determined. I think I even shared this even with you recently, that let's live a full life. Let's not just talk about having a great marriage, but let's be about having a great marriage.
And then, to be honest with you, I think that was one of the most hurtful moments, that because I recognized that the things that I was doing to you wasn't cool at all.
Yeah.
But I think what it did for me, it helped me to see me, and to watch you pack your bags and leave, and not to say that you were going to leave, but literally leave, made me really look at my life. And if there was a time that I ever fasted and prayed and I asked God to show me, it was that time. And He showed me that, how weak of a man that I was, a person that I would never be proud of, because I never thought I would be that type of guy. And those areas that God, had to shine His light so that I can actually see Him, and then I can see you. But then there was also a time where I stepped out of the comfort of our marriage, and it really, literally, almost destroyed us.
Yeah. That was one of the hardest experiences, I think. Sometimes certain things still trigger it, but I just try to pray about it and write it down, and just try to get past it.
Those are times, and I want you to know this seriously, that I'm sorry that I did anything. I've done all these things to break you. But I often tell people, even when we share the stories, that God saved me twice. And number one, He saved me because I accepted His Son as Lord and Savior. But two is that He saved me through you. I found grace, and I'll never forget, really kind of the magnification of grace really came to light when I was reading Max Lucado's book one day, and I really recognized that there was grace that had met me. Grace had been staying in my house, and grace had been sleeping in my bed. Grace had been riding with me, going to work, and grace had been talking to me on the phone, and I was ignorantly didn't recognize it. And so I thank you for just being a gracious woman, for being a great wife, a great mother, a great friend, someone who loves me unconditionally. There's not too many women that I know would have stuck around with a person that would have verbally, physically, mentally, and then also have walked out of the covenant. And for all of that, I say I'm sorry. And I'm just looking forward. But I know the scripture in Romans 8:28. It says, and we know that all things work together for the good. And so I know that what we've been through is working, and it's not just for us, but it's for somebody else.
Yeah.
Some other young couple who is experiencing some of the same things that we might experience.
And I mean, we got through it. Eventually, I wouldn't trade those times now for the world, because God's grace. I mean, I believe that was a season of, and we stand on that scripture. You say it all the time. I say it all the time, that God will perfect those things that concerns us, that concerneth you. And He knows that, especially in ministry, your children concern you. When you see them making bad choices and bad decisions, that's a concern of yours. But when I look today and see how God perfected those areas, I just think that it was necessary to get us where we are, to give us the compassion, the understanding, just to get us where we are. You know, we had to. You know, like Jesus says to the woman, speaks to the woman in Samaria, and the scripture says, I never understood that. It says that he needs go through Samaria.
Right.
He had to. It's just some things you can't miss in life. You just have to do it. You have to go through those places. And I just thank God for those places, man.
And we both can attest to that he will deliver us from all our fears.
Oh, and all your afflictions.
Okay, and afflictions. That night we went to prayer, and we got home that night, and you remember I was on the side of the bed praying, and you fell asleep, and
encounter. That was I literally, because I was at that time in such a bad place that I believe I became bitter. And bitterness is a place that, you know, you really can't go and maintain sanity. Because when I got to that place, in actuality, you know, people will say and use the excuse that, you know, they're upset at the situation, but in actuality, you can become embittered at God. And I never forget, that was my first totally literal demonic attack. When the enemy came into the room and I heard physically, I heard chains, just chains. Yeah. And that's when
I was on the side of the bed.
Yeah,
and
you couldn't pray me through.
Just pray.
Yeah.
Because I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
I felt in my spirit.
Yeah, and you couldn't, that was about me and God and the enemy. So he couldn't, even in that, when he would get on the side of the bed and pray, it would cease. But when he got up and got back in the bed, it would start again. When you did those things, it would start again. And so finally, I got up in my spirit and I began to war for myself. And I think that's what God was trying to pull back out of me, because I thought I lost my fight. You know, things can happen to us in life where you think you lose your fight. You think you lose your warring ability. And so I got up and I began to come against that thing, and that was the only thing when I heard the literal chains break, and my freedom came that night, and I was able to. That was the breaking time, a breaking point where I felt like, you know, I could go on, and that this too would pass, and it did. It did. So God is faithful. So what would you tell someone? Because, you know, I really thought that I wasn't feeling that covering at that time. You wasn't feeling being covered, because we literally would cover each other, because I couldn't pray for you and at that particular time, because I couldn't even pray for myself, you know, but we were able to sustain and maintain. And I really believe it was because of our previous walk, and my previous time of being in that place with God. And then I could remember where I used to be and how I used to war and what God had done before for me. And I was able to come out of it. So what advice would you give?
I mean, right after that is when God really birthed us and sent us to pastor in the city of the Lord.
Yeah, in ministry.
When ministry, we conquered that thing. And so I thank God it has been a blessing. 34 years. With the chili. That's a long time. But it's been good. There's been some good times.
Yes.
God, through it all, God has really blessed us.
Yeah.
So we know that it's about the grace of God.
It is the grace of God. And that's what we are. We're winding it up. The one thing that I can say is that we have to allow God's grace. You know, I pray consistently that His grace will be before us, His mercy behind us, His favor upon us, and it would just surround us, that His Spirit would surround us, because that's what we need. We cannot make this journey alone. If we had not known the Lord and something like that was as devastating as just me going through, we probably wouldn't be I could have lost. Anything could have happened.
That's right.
But we have to just couples, people of God, maintain that
Christ
place.
has to be the center of that thing, and He'll hold those things together.
Amen.
By His grace.
I love it.
Yes.
And
We
Christian
know that.
marriage.
Christian
The marriage is
rock.
right. Yes. Amen.
Christian marriages rock.
Christian marriage rocks.
Marriage rock.
Christian marriage rocks. Everyone's given up. There's no endurance anymore. If we would have given up, where would we
They don't
be?
teach you how to be married. They don't tell you the truth. They don't tell you the highs and lows. They don't tell you that you need to know how to resolve.
Just discovering life outside of church. It's like I knew how to be Superman, but I didn't know how to be Clark Kent.
I thank you for just being a gracious woman, for being a great wife, a great mother, a great friend. So
And to
much.
make a long story short, we got together and we began to communicate. She felt like I wasn't concerned.
Endurance. I encourage anyone that's in a marriage, embrace endurance. And also
To say, he said,
the
marriage
process.
is the closest thing to heaven you'll ever experience. It also
Wow.
be the closest thing to hell you experience.
Wow.
And that just has always stayed in me through
You know,
the years.
that's
That's
one
why I
of the biggest
always
things. People get married and they lose themselves. They're no longer them. They, you know, the two is supposed to become one flesh, but it didn't say you're supposed to.
This
lose
is really
identity.
great because of what we're doing.
Amen. Amen.
That will make an impact on someone's marriage.
And I could see the hurt because she felt like, I could see the hurt in her eyes, so we've had some nice prayer and hugging and kissing.
Yes, sir. It really was.
So good. But it was very intense, but what really broke that thing down was when I began to communicate.
Yes.
Cut all the church business. Let's stop the church business and take care of mama. And it goes back to communication, and we could have just kept that thing going. And I think that's where we miss it in marriage.
I believe this is really great because of what we're doing.
Amen. Amen.
That will make an impact on someone's marriage. I believe the enemy comes to fight us. I mean, it was like our communication was just totally off. And see, I'm a stickler where, hey, we have to have effective communication.
That's
I know all the skills, but it wasn't happening.
Even today, we had a heated,
Today.
when we first met, this always threw Lydia in the left field. Like I was always quick to forgive, like anything going on in the marriage. And Lydia, she just couldn't understand it. She was like, "How do you forgive me so fast?" I said,
I would be mad. If I got mad, it was for days.